So the goal here is to get your help to win the Elon Musk X Prize $50 million competition. So I really want to, at the end of it, have some conversations, particularly from material scientists and engineers, about how we can do this. So let me start off by the problem statement. This is climate change. This is last year in Canada when we had a large heat dome and we broke records on 3 consecutive days, 46 degrees, 47 degrees, and 49 degrees Celsius each and every day in the town of Lytton in Canada. And on the 4th day, the town burned down. And so this is a dramatic example of what climate change has done. I could have shown this as an example of climate change, which is Mozambique, which has gone through 4 years of drought. But overwhelmingly, we don't care about Africa, and we don't care about the impacts of climate change there. It's when it's really brought home to us in North America that we really understand the full and significant cost of global climate change. So obviously what we have to do is reduce emissions if we're going to keep below 1.5 degrees Celsius. It is extraordinarily unlikely that we'll be able to do that, keep below 1.5 degrees. Irrespective of what we do in terms of emissions, we have to capture carbon. So about 40 or 45 billion tons are going into the atmosphere every year. The expectation is that we capture 10 billion tons of carbon from the atmosphere and store it permanently. So that's the task at hand, and it's a very, very difficult one. So Elon Musk put $100 billion up for an international competition here, global competition. And PlantVillage at Penn State, I won't talk about what PlantVillage is, you can find out that on the web, but PlantVillage at Penn State has won 2 parts of that competition already. We won the $100,000 student prize for monitoring and evaluation, and we won the $1 million milestone prize. 15 teams won this. The idea is it gives us money in the bank in order to go forward for the grand prize of $50 million and runner-up prizes of $15 million each, so another $80 million to play for. The idea is whichever team demonstrates the cheapest and most scalable method of drawing down and permanently storing carbon wins the prize, whether it's direct air capture with machines or nature-based solutions. For us, it's going to be nature-based solutions. PlantVillage reaches about 15 million farmers every week in Africa, and we will, in the next couple of years, scale that to about 50 million, and then onwards to 200 million. The way in which we do that is through our global platform, which relies upon artificial intelligence, cloud computing, phones, and a global community of young people called the Dream Team. So our idea is AI-powered carbon capture tools. So the problem of many farms across the world, Africa especially, is that the effects of climate change are sucking all the moisture out of the ground, because more wind and more heat. And this is an example of this from eastern Kenya, and we see the drought is causing failures, in this case of corn or maize, and farmers have just no yield from this. Our system is very simple. We're going to plant trees around the borders of the farms, and that reduces that pull of moisture called the evapotranspiration. It reduces that pull of moisture from it. You notice this every time you walk under a tree on a hot day, it's much cooler. So this leads to increased productivity inside the field, and so then we have a lot more carbon being captured in the trees as well as inside the within the boundaries of this. Here are examples of trees double spaced in fields in Kenya, so we can have rows of trees planted, and this provides the benefit to the soil. It also reduces the moisture being lost. Here's examples of something which, these ones are about 4 years old, so obviously straddling the equator, trees are going to grow really fast compared to here when they're asleep for 7 months of the year. And then you have the maize which is grown alongside it. So you have this, what's called agroforestry system. So we want to move to a situation that's here to here, where we're reducing the loss of moisture from the ground and also diversify the risks for farmers. So the benefit is not just the loss of moisture. Trees capture carbon and store it for long term. They also capture carbon in the soil through associations with below ground fungi, and this means the soil carbon can increase. Soil is the largest storage unit of carbon on the planet, so we have trees capturing it, and by virtue of having trees, we have the soil capturing it, and then it increases the productivity here. If you don't have failing crops, those crops are also going to capture more carbon. And then it also keeps the moisture in the ground as well. So we started last September, and since that time we planted over 600,000 trees in both Kenya and Burkina Faso. And we do this because we have this large trust relationship with farmers, a well-developed logistical system, and that youth system that I talked about, the Dream Team. We expect to get to 2 million in the next 12 months, so we have a lot of issues where we rent land, we scale up production, we work with Kenyan Forestry Service, and then in order to solve the problem, we want to get to 20 to 50 million trees per year. This sounds like a huge number. We did that in the 1930s at the Dust Bowl, where we had a coordinated effort across 19 states, planting 225 million trees. So it has been done. Unfortunately, we're now ripping those trees up in the never-ending pursuit of cheap gasoline with biofuels, but we did it before and we can absolutely do it again. So we also work very closely with across all communities, including schools, provides a benefit to them. So one of the critical issues because of climate change is the increasing droughts and the unpredictability of the rain. So this way we want to create water independence for every carbon capture cube. So these counties where we work, they have a lot of rain, but it all falls in one particular time, and there's long periods of drought. So this is a 20,000 litre tank. It costs about $60 or $70 to put in, so very, very cheap. So the average African or Kenyan or African general worker is 1/10 the cost of a Chinese worker. So just think of what we can get through leveraging local ability to scale up production. And of course that's very meaningful because these people have failing crops and you're providing them a source of income through work. And again, very similar to what we've done historically. So this is just one of our nurseries with the Kenyan forestry system. And then the really wonderful value here is that the farmers are the ones who are looking after the trees. So we then distribute them, about 100, 120 trees per farm. The farmers are extremely interested in having trees. For them, it's sort of an insurance policy. It's the way in which they can send their kids to school. They plant some trees, 10 years later they sell them. They sell them for firewood, and we want to stop that. We want to capture that carbon permanently, but they're extraordinarily interested. We hear a lot of stories of when we distribute seedlings, they're actually stolen by neighbours even before they go into the ground. And even last week we were hearing neighbours are actually uprooting seedlings and stealing. So the interest in having seedlings is huge among the community of farmers. And remember, in Kenya alone we reach 9 million people a week. So there's a huge scale of potential here. So it's not just that we distribute to them. This is Rosalind Okoche, which is one of our lead farmers, and she's holding the phone we provided. This is essentially a supercomputer. It runs AI models offline, which are very powerful, but also connects to satellite systems. And then the idea is that if we have a lead farmer here in a network of other farmers, then they can all co-learn together, improving the capacity to adapt and then share information. We want to take the wood and convert it to biochar, which is through pyrolysis, a stable form of carbon, which then benefits the farmer in two ways. It holds water, so it's climate change adaptation, but it's also mitigation in that it has a median life of about 1,400 years in the soil. So it's a permanent sequestration of carbon. This is us putting it last week into Zai pits, holes in the ground in eastern Kenya. So we put it in there and it benefits the farmers. But then when we put it in there, we can determine that it's traceable and transparent. We put it all on blockchain. So in this case, we can convince possible customers or whoever else is going to buy the carbon that we can do this. We set up a company to enable this. So this is Carbon for Good. And Netflix wants to be a customer of us, and the goal is to get 98% of whatever we sell to Netflix or other people to the farmers' hands. So what do we need? We need to capture or eliminate the methane from pyrolysis, isolate the CO2 because we could cure concrete with that. We want to have direct air capture with sorbents, atmospheric water generators, and other things we haven't thought of. That's what we want you all to be part of in ultimately winning this prize and then saving the world. Thank you.
Questions, comments?
Congratulations. That's very impressive. Congratulations. So we have a carbon cycle already, right? So your point is we have disrupted it because National Geographic has a centerfold in the latest month showing the deforestation all over the world, and you're trying to reverse that to some extent. That's sort of the central mission here, but addition of AI and so on to coordinate with everybody.
Yeah, so for sure we're my background is rainforest ecology. There's a lot of people trying to increase forest cover, but nobody's really looking at the potential role that farms can play. It provides an immediate benefit in adaptation, and it also provides mitigation. So I think it's a better solution than the ones already proposed because it satisfies the immediate need of farmers. Africa has contributed less than 3 or 4% to greenhouse gases over the last 200 years, but are paying the largest price. And so we necessarily must think of adaptation and mitigation in one go. This is not to say this is any problem with reforestation, which is all fine and should happen, but it's an additional way in which we can pull down carbon.
I have one additional question, and this is really your thoughts on this. Michael Mann, for example, had a recent comment that carbon capture is really taking attention away from, the fact that we are pumping a lot of CO2, and that this is sort of, it's an excuse in some ways to pump more CO2 into the atmosphere because we can always do that.
And he's 100% correct. So as I grew up as an Irish Catholic, I'm not, of course, a Catholic now, but it's an indulgence, just like we have the Catholic Church. You pay somebody money to get away with the sins of today. He's correct. And that's not my goal here. My goal is to enable the largest wealth transfer in history to Africa. For the last 400 years, we've pulled all of this, whether it's humans, resources, or money from Africa, and we still do it. Europe will have to spend billions of dollars, if not and trillions of dollars, on capturing carbon, same with America. My goal is to make sure that that money goes to Africa. So we make sure that the trees we grow and develop are suitable for the right location. We want to make sure we don't have a monocrop. That's the problem on Penn State's campus with the elm trees and the disease, chestnut in this country in the 1900s. So we want to make sure we have diversity. Fruit trees are really excellent. A lot of our farmers do grow mango and other things. Increasing the productivity by combining the trees with mycorrhizal fungi is also very good, as well as adaptive irrigation. So we're certainly mindful of all of these things. Thanks.
Hi. This is a great project. Regarding multiplying it, I can see two ways. One is to go to different parts of the world and see where we can reproduce this. And two, how we can save the soil from excessive fertilizer contamination. In that way, don't deteriorate the soil further. So I'd like to hear your comments on both these aspects.
So there are 570 million farmers in the world, and about 87% are smallholder farmers, less than 2 hectares. And a lot of them are in low-income countries where they don't use fertilizers as inputs. And what we don't want is all of those farmers going to the sort of farming we do here, which is heavily reliant upon synthetic fertilizers. Firstly, because they don't get the money from that, and they're also liable to shocks. And you can see that in the Russian-Ukraine conflict, because Russia is a major supplier of fertilizers, so they can't afford that. But secondly, if they were able to do agroecology, they wouldn't have to spend the money on that. They could preserve the soil, and they could get more value for themselves. It's a very important point. In the same way we don't want hundreds of millions of people in Africa going to electricity from coal, we don't want hundreds of millions of people going to food from synthetic fertilizers, since there's obviously other solutions. And India is obviously another case for that as well. And we've seen a lot of failures in the Green Revolution to India, the massive rate of suicide in India by Indian farmers. So we don't want to repeat those mistakes and stop them from continuing to happen. But very important point.
Hi, David. I'm a huge supporter of you and what you're doing. Congratulations again. I'm going to ask you a couple of challenging questions, 2 quick ones. One is the fact that the labor is so cheap. There's one way to look at that and go, that's fantastic. You can make the dollars go a lot further. Another person might take issue with that and say, wait a minute, are you giving a living wage to the people on the ground, to the local people? Can you just speak to that for a second?
So we all talk about outsourcing. We don't, everything is made in China or elsewhere. We currently do international agricultural development in an outsourcing model. All of the countries in Africa or the Indian subcontinent or elsewhere, the education and research is outsourced to universities in Europe or America. We believe in insourcing. So we pay young people with degrees a really good wage, with maternity leave and with benefits and all that sort of stuff, and we can get 37 of those young people for the price of an FAO consultant. 650 or CGI or World Bank. So insourcing is just so much cheaper and better. It doesn't imply that we're getting terrible wages.
Exploitative going on there. The
No,
people
no.
are happy with their wages.
And then we do international training. We have 150 people a day on the payroll who are getting this. It's just a better model. But the question is a very good one, but absolutely not.
Thank you. And then the follow-up is about unintended consequences. So often we have, great intentions, and they, the paved road to hell. You heard the old adage. So the one thing I caught in the slide deck there was about farmers that would be selling trees for firewood. And I know a lot of Africans still use firewood a lot. So are you going to try to factor something into your plan so that the firewood is not out there on the market? The people who used to, burn firewood will be helped in a way to have an alternative source of heat.
Yeah, so we're not going to change firewood burning in the next 20 years. The average woman in Kenya spends 1/5 of her week collecting firewood. The average woman in Kenya essentially smokes 2 packs of cigarettes a day from the inhalation of fumes indoor cooking. If we use an updraft oven, which creates biochar and reduces smoke by about 93%, we could solve that problem. She could still have firewood, and she could still get money for the biochar that she produces, and she can reduce this. So all solutions exist, but we're not going in saying don't do anything. And because we're a community-driven organization with all the local Dream Team members and the farmers, we want to avoid those unintended consequences. But that's what everybody says. But we're very mindful of that.
So a follow-up question on soil health. So at the rate that you're growing trees, you don't want to compromise soil health because it's important for nutrition as well, for example. So what are your thoughts on maintaining soil health, or do you have a plan in mind that is sustainable for that?
So the current system is problematic because the soil just blows away. So it gets dry and then blows away. And we see increasing aridity. The trees stabilize that at the borders, and then they increase the soil health because they have associations with fungi under the ground. Some trees have bacteria to fix nitrogen, which is also important. And for the diversity of tree question, we want to make sure we balance that. We also want to make sure that we're continuously monitoring so we do co-payment plans with farmers. We pay $5, they pay $5, and we get a soil test, and then we can see how this is changing over time. So we also want to make sure that all the data we collect is available for ecologists to study this question so that we can understand these problems and don't run into more unintended consequences.